Trump is tightening his grip on Canadian oil and gas, but meanwhile, China is quietly throwing the doors wide open. A shift as drastic as it is unexpected is unfolding smoothly, like water seeping through the cracks of a rock. As the United States imposes a 10% tariff on crude oil and gas from Canada, a deal as valuable as gold has just been signed between Canada and China, shaking the foundations of the energy market. Rongsheng Petrochemical, the Chinese refining giant that produces 800,000 barrels a day, has just established itself in Calgary, the heart of Canada's oil industry. But that was only the beginning. Canada, once a secondary player on the global energy stage, is now emerging as a major actor. As the US raises the cost of its oil through taxes, Asia finds in Canada a stable, powerful, and renewed energy source. Stay ahead of the curve with the latest in tech. Subscribe to Data Dollar now and never miss an update on the innovations that are shaping the future of business and technology. Join our community. A 25% tariff on all vehicles not assembled within the United States. If the car is manufactured on US soil, no tax applies. With this measure, Trump drives up car prices, making costs skyrocket. A vehicle that once cost $48,000 could now climb to $60,000. As American consumers suffer the impact of these price hikes, thousands of workers lose their jobs, while China watches from the shadows, smiling. The Ford F-150, an icon of American automotive culture, no longer fully represents national identity. Take the Ford F-150, one of the best-selling vehicles and a symbol of the US auto industry. Yet few know that this model is not entirely built within the country. While its assembly is done on American soil, the vehicle contains up to 30,000 parts sourced from over 24 different countries. Alternators from Mexico, wheels from South Korea, drive shafts from Canada. All these components now face a 25% tariff under the government's new policies. With crucial elements sourced from abroad, this tariff policy will bring unexpected consequences for domestic manufacturers. The increase in costs will be significant. Tariffs on parts imported from Mexico and Canada alone could raise the price of each vehicle by around $3,000. Add to this the taxes on parts from other countries, such as Korean tires, which could tack on an additional $3,000 to $6,000 per vehicle. Moreover, tariffs on steel and aluminum, essential materials, will mean an extra cost of between $400 and $600. Altogether, a car that originally cost $48,000 could end up costing $60,000, forcing consumers to pay much more for every vehicle they purchase. Businesses are coming back to America to avoid the taxes, Trump claims. But will tariffs truly bring factories back to the US? His goal is to force automakers to produce again on US soil, supposedly creating more jobs for Americans. However, the reality is different. Rather than increasing hiring, many companies will opt to automate processes to cut costs. Relocating the entire production chain within the United States is no easy task. A study indicates that doing so could take years and require investments of billions of dollars, not to mention the risks of reduced quality or manufacturing delays. The American automotive industry is facing a deep crisis. Once solid and based on free trade agreements with partners like Mexico and Canada, the supply network has been shaken by the new tariffs, creating chaos in production and distribution. Besides the disruption, these changes increase manufacturing costs, forcing manufacturers to make tough pricing decisions. Instead of focusing on innovation and developing new models, automakers must now debate whether to keep importing parts from Canada and Mexico or try to find alternatives within the country. This distraction slows innovation, which is key to staying competitive internationally. While the US struggles with the effects of its own policies, China is moving quickly and becoming the world's largest vehicle exporter. Many experts have started to question America's strategy. As one specialist said, it's not about the strong eating the weak, but about the fast outrunning the slow. And right now, the US is falling behind. China has begun to dominate the global automotive market, while the United States remains trapped in debates over tariffs and logistical problems. Will it maintain its leadership in the industry, or will it be overtaken by competitors like China? In less than 72 hours, China rejected 150,000 tons of US beef, valued at over $520 million. Russia quickly seized the opportunity to step in. Is this merely a commercial stumble, or are we witnessing a crucial shift in the global economic balance? In early March 2025, China abruptly cancelled the entry of 15,000 tons of US beef without any prior statements or warnings. The shipments were turned away at key ports like Shanghai and Guangzhou, citing a single reason: non-compliance with sanitary standards. The official reason was food safety, but the move coincided with the US imposing a 25% tariff on electric vehicles and components from China, affecting trade worth more than $38 billion. Analysts noted that the volume of beef rejected in March was 4 times higher than in January, delivering a strong blow to the US export sector. This was not a mere technical issue at the ports, but a strategic, carefully calculated message. Although the impact seemed confined to the shipments, the real shock hit the heart of American agriculture. Texas, Kansas, and Nebraska, states that together represent over 70% of beef exports to China, were the hardest hit. By mid-March, over $520 million in contracts had been cancelled or suspended. Wholesale beef prices plummeted by 7.3% in just 2 weeks. Thousands of tons now sit in cold storage. The cold logistics chain has been disrupted, and the livestock feed industry is beginning to experience secondary losses. A Nebraska producer stated that his $4 million export contract is hanging by a thread, forcing him to sell at a loss in the domestic market, which cannot absorb such a large volume. Here comes the twist. These battered states form what is known as Deep America, the electoral stronghold of the country. As the US faltered, Russia moved forward without hesitation. In the first quarter of 2025, Russian beef exports to China grew by 32%, reaching 41,000 tons. But this story goes beyond numbers. It's about how Russia anticipated the conflict. Since 2023, Moscow signed bilateral agreements with Beijing to establish a veterinary inspection system, allowing access for 40 previously excluded processing plants. By November 2024, a new rail corridor between Volgograd and Sanji was inaugurated, cutting shipping time from 28 days by sea to just 11 days by train. Calculated strategy or failed decisions? Although some argue that Trump's actions could benefit the country, the real question remains: is this a carefully planned strategy or simply the result of poorly designed policies? Current economic indicators paint a worrying picture. The US stock market has been declining, consumer confidence is weakening, and companies are cutting back on investments. The Federal Reserve has issued warnings. Without proper adjustments, the economy could slip into a deeper recession. Many experts argue that without a clear and stable economic strategy, the US could face even more severe consequences in the coming months. Some economists believe that Trump's focus on trade protectionism, without a long-term plan, has weakened the economy's resilience. The lack of policy consistency has caused companies and investors to lose confidence, triggering a significant capital flight. Without timely adjustments, a prolonged recession could directly impact millions of Americans in terms of jobs and wages. Unstable tariff policies, a constant source of uncertainty. One of the biggest sources of instability in the US economy has been the unpredictable nature of the tariff policies driven by Trump. Over the past few years, he has repeatedly shifted his stance on tariffs, particularly with key trade partners like China, Canada, and Mexico. One day, he would announce heavy tariffs to protect domestic industries, and the next, he would postpone or cancel them. This lack of consistency created massive uncertainty for businesses. Companies need predictability to plan production, investment, and hiring, but when rules change constantly, they are unable to make informed decisions. This not only erodes business confidence, but also drives investors away from US markets, pushing them toward countries with more stable trade policies. Trump removes tariffs on Canada and Mexico. A strategic retreat in recent years, Trump imposed tariffs on many imports from Canada and Mexico, only to lift them later. Officially, he did so to support neighboring economies, but in reality, the retreat seems to have been forced by the negative economic impact within the US American companies, especially in the manufacturing and automotive sectors faced rising production costs due to the tariffs. Supply chains were disrupted, and consumer goods became more expensive. Faced with criticism from business leaders and analysts, Trump had no choice but to back down. Far from an act of goodwill, it was a retreat driven by economic pressure. This decision exposed the lack of strategic planning in his trade policy. Imposing tariffs only to later remove them damaged the US's credibility in international negotiations. Without a coherent trade policy, the country risks losing influence in global markets. And without a long-term strategy, domestic businesses will continue to suffer from sudden shifts in the economic landscape. Inflation soars as a result of Trump's economic policies. One of the most severe economic problems today is inflation. During Trump's administration, several fiscal and trade decisions contributed to persistent economic challenges. In particular, the rapid expansion of national debt has had a direct impact. Data shows that under Trump's leadership, US debt increased by $8 trillion, an alarming figure that has directly fueled rising prices. Furthermore, the imposition of high tariffs made imported goods more expensive, adding even more pressure to inflation. When prices rise, consumer spending decreases, further straining the economy. Although inflation has begun to moderate under the current administration, the long-term effects of previous decisions continue to affect the economy. Financial analysts warn that without proper control measures, inflation will remain a major threat. Managing public spending and adjusting monetary policy will be essential to stabilize the economy and protect American households from financial deterioration. If you enjoyed the video and would like to continue learning about technology and markets, subscribe to Data Dollar and leave a like. See you next time.